This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
We're here, and we have a new guest.
This is Jaymie, who I met at JordanCon and had a wonderful time talking with. And she is from the website dragonmount.com. So
hi, guys.
Go ahead and tell me about yourself and how you, as I ask everybody who comes on, how did you find Wheel of Time and how did you get involved in Dragonmount and what are you doing there? And do you have anything else you'd like to tell us about?
How I got involved in Wheel of Time, it was high school boyfriend.
Same.
I think it was the summer before my junior year in high school, and I had left on this trip. It was kind of for dorky kids, and which was funny because I did the sports thing and I also did the dork things, and the dork things were so much better in the long run. But this one particular thing, I had to go away and learn about government in my state, which is Missouri. You had to get nominated and stuff, and I hated it. I was super bored. And there was a copy of The Eye of the World that I had stuck in my backpack at the last minute. And the guy I was dating at the time, kept going, you gotta try this. You gotta try this. And he referred to them as the books. And he's like, you gotta start reading the books. And I was like, I don't read fantasy, dude. I have no plans to read fantasy. And I kept reading the prologue and I kept putting it back down.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is not for me. So I get stuck at this thing called Girl State, and it's just monumentally boring. And I pull out this copy and I was like, fine, I'm gonna make it through the prologue. And by the end of the week, I was 3/4 of the way from the book and I've never looked back.
Nice.
So the boy and I broke up eventually, but the but the Wheel of Time remains. So
things that stick with you after relationships, Wheel of Time and STDs, those are the two things. Yeah. One's slightly better than the other.
Right. Yes. Luckily one, right? So yeah, I've loved it ever since. I come back to it. I don't have I'm not a reader that reads on a schedule, but so I've been going with it for a long time. I know that some of the newer readers will refer to people that actually had to wait for the books to come out. They'll call us the OG, the OG Wheel of Time fans because we know the torture, we know the wait. We know why some people call that sloggy area the slog, even though when we read it, maybe it's not as sloggy as everyone says, but when you were waiting and waiting and waiting for 2 years in some instances for a book to come out and you just weren't getting quite the action and the punch that you were looking for, you go, oh man. And so you have that little bit of disappointment that resides. So I look back at that, and the book that was coming out when I first started reading, I want to say I've been reading since before Lord of Chaos was published, or maybe before Crown of Swords might have been the next.
Do you know
one
what year that
out.
was?
96.
96, yeah. So you and I, same year, picked it up.
Okay, right on.
Of course, they'll be soon calling us the OGs who were here before the show. So
We read it before it was optioned.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. There's so much discussion about that, and I finally I knew there would be people that would come in and find it because of the show. There would be people that would find it in other ways, but the ones who come to it from the show, I thought, I really want to say, well, I was reading it before and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no way, man, I'm just going to be chill and go, I've been a fan of the series since 96 and wait to see people go, oh, it's been around how long, And then you'll get an idea, of the level of involvement or, how that person came into the fandom. So I welcome it all, but yeah, it's kind of nice to sit back and do the old person nod and smile. Yes, I was there when the lore began.
And you've got some articles on Dragonmount, which gives you some real street cred as being one of the OGs. So, was that good enough for the kids? Is that, yeah. But no, seriously, so how did you get involved with Dragonmount, and how are you? Do you know Jason? Oh, obviously you know Jason.
So I know Jason. We met in person one time actually at JordanCon. He was hosting or emceeing a spelling bee, which I actually won, and because I'm Yeah, I'm that dork. It was funny though because I ended up doing Jordan Kahn was looking for some help with social media, and so with on their marketing team, or I'm sorry, their communications team, and so I was like, this sounds like something I should do, or that I should try, and Jordan Kahn really is the only true con, like an overnight con that I have been to. And so I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that people were like, oh, come to your first con, volunteer, and now you're here for life. Now you're ours. I didn't know. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. And I have such a long history with Wheel of Time, even though I didn't have a long history with Jordan Con. But so I met Jason in that roundabout way where I got involved with Jordan Con, and then just sort of reaching out and knowing that he was kind of looking for some content creators, some writers, and I just kind of threw my name out there and was like, hey, I'm doing some stuff for Jordan Con, and if you just if you're needing any writers or bloggers or anything, let me know. And he was at that time. So it was really me just kind of taking that leap and going, oh my gosh, Jason Dunzell, I've been checking out Dragonmount for 20 years, but whatever. And he happened to see that chat and said, what you got? So I directed him to a little site that I created to keep some of my writing for things. I try to do a little freelance editing and writing at times. And then when I told him how, that I started Wheel of Time in 1996, he was kind of like, oh my gosh, we need to talk. So I refer to it as I've been reading Wheel of Time since the Age of Legends.
Yes. It feels that way.
But we're really glad you were able to make it here, despite procrastination on our end and other ends. And it's really glad to have you come on and talk with us about the chapter.
This is so cool. This is so cool to be on here, and I think it's going to help inspire me to get some stuff to Jason again.
Yes.
Yeah, I expect to see articles on Dragonmount after this.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a very symbiotic relationship we have here right now, guys.
And Jason is coming on, so I'll check up on you.
Okay.
So this is chapter 12, A Morning of Victory, and our symbol is the 4-leaf clover snake. Which is generally the Forsaken symbol. Am I looking at the right chapter? Ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. You gave me one of those, like, what?
No, I was just like, how do I debate the meaning of the clover snake this time? And I'm like, nah, it's just accurate. There's Forsaken and Dark Friends and plots and...
Halima.
Yeah, lots of Halima.
Lots of Halima. And a morning of what appears to be victories for Egwene, but yet...
Yeah. Well, the land thing is a victory. That's just a straight-ahead victory. A lot of the rest of it is more complicated.
Well, and also victories for Egwene under the thumb of Halima aren't exactly victories.
They're victories for Halima. Who, Forsaken, chapter header, like, maybe those are the victories. It's victories for the dark as much as for the side of light.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah.
So this is just going to put us in context. Last chapter, Egwene was in her tent, and she rode out, saw Myrelle.
Just walking by,
grabbed her and Suan, and said Suan had picked up a few little tidbits, and we're going to try and track them down.
Yeah, because she's trying to cheer up Swan, because Swan's down in the dumps for some reason. She's like, aha, yelling at Myrelle, that will make her feel better.
And at the same time, Gareth Bryn showed up and was like, I want to show you something. So they're going to Gareth Bryn's thing first, and then they're going to follow Swan's clues to whatever that is.
Which then ends up having like multiple things that come out of that. A lot happens in this chapter. It's like hard almost to realize it's one chapter because so many different plot points move forward.
Chapter is thick.
Agreed. When I was going through it, I was like, oh yeah, this is where we see Lan.
Right.
And then I'm looking, oh, remember this talk with Gareth Bryn, and and then remember, and then Halima near the end, and I was going back and forth and going, man, this is a meaty chapter. There are lots of machinations going on here.
Yes.
Quite.
Well, it's sort of this little bit sets up the rest of Egwene's plot, right?
Absolutely.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and really puts an inflection point in Nynaeve's arc completely. Even though we don't see Nynaeve, the fact that Lan gets brought in and sent off is like that's Nynaeve's story changes because of Egwene finding Lan here.
Definitely. definitely. Well, she lives.
Right. Yeah, which is slightly important for the whole world, because I don't know that the Bull of the Winds would have gone off as well without her.
The crooked hills and ridges surrounding the camp showed every sign of the drought and unseasonable heat. The unholy heat in truth, even the dullest scullion scrubbing pots saw the Dark One's touch on the world. The true forest lay beyond them to the west, but twisted oaks grew out of the rocky slopes, sour gums and pines of unfamiliar shape, and trees Egwene had no names for, brown and yellow and bare-branched, not winter bare or brown, starved for moisture and coolness, dying if the weather did not change soon. Beyond the last of the soldiers, a river ran off south and west. The resin drell, 20 paces wide and flanked on either side by hard-baked mud studded with stones. Swirling around rocks that might have made crossing hazardous in other days, the water rose short of the horses' knees as they forded. Egwene felt her own problems dwindle in size. Despite her head, she offered a small prayer for Nynaeve and Elaine. The search was as important as anything she did. More. The world would live if she failed, but they had to succeed.
Just such an uncomfortable paragraph. It's like, the world's drying up.
I need some water. My mouth is drying up after reading that.
Yeah, out where I live, it's very dry right now. I take daily rain measurements, and we are not getting as much for April and May as we normally do. And no, don't take my creeks away.
Right?
Oh.
And we had bad fires last year already.
Yeah, something. The West will
goodness.
be on fire again.
Already, I agree with you so much on the of the description, in this chapter, the way that it opens. I just imagine, I can see the brown, I can see the yellow, the bare, and so much of this entire chapter is that. And so again, it's amazing how much it keeps our attention when I'm just imagining them going through these very, bland brown, tan, yellow woods. If I remember correctly, the whole chapter is them talking outside, walking outside, and then even when they get to their destination, there's nothing nice to look at here. And I remember getting through the chapter and going, man, that was nasty.
In what should be winter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a miserable part of summer instead of winter. That's like so many levels of uncomfortable.
And you guys talk about how much is really going on here. And I was looking at Dragonmount, looking at some chapter recaps, and an interesting note about Crown of Swords is that it takes place over the shortest amount of time. So much is happening in this little bitty amount of time. And I remember thinking, here we are. I don't mean to fixate on these yucky woods, but so much is going on, and all they did was walk from this one spot down a little ways to this other spot. And how much did we learn in that time?
No, we figured out that it's about 5 weeks before Egwene opens a gateway and the army ends up on the borders of Tarvalon between now.
Wow.
Like, it just doesn't feel like that because that's 3-4 books away,
Mm-hmm.
But that's a 5-week period of time. It's nuts, yeah.
And winter will return in that 5 weeks. When they make that gateway, snow goes billowing through. So, like, it is the depths of summer right now, and in like a month in the story world, it will be the heart of winter.
Oh my goodness.
So, pushing forward, we get a little bit of discussion about Myrelle and the Band of the Red Hand.
The Dragonsworn versus the band versus the foragers, that whole like trifecta of the farmers getting completely screwed.
I think the Dragonsworn are White Cloaks.
Is this the right area for that? Well, everywhere's the right area for that, but
Specifically these plains, though?
yeah. And this wouldn't be Mistima's people because they're in Ghealodon, so it's not those Dragonsworn. So yeah, rogue White Cloaks and just the regular run of bandits being like, the dragon made me do it.
But I don't think there are any Dragonsworn, any of Mistima's folks, any of the whole like bands of roving Dragonsworn. Maybe a couple, but I really do think that this is White Cloaks.
Yeah, White Cloaks and bandits, because a lot of people just label anyone they don't like as Dragonsworn. It's like the hot new updated version of Dark Friend, like.
Yeah, I think that's not that's very intentional that Robert Jordan put that in there just to show that exact sentiment. Here's Myrelle, an all-knowing Aes Sedai going, ugh, Dragonsworn animals, just assuming. when we're like, no.
There's nuance here. Now
You
there's
guys all, you guys think you know and you don't know. That's like, 85% of the problems could be solved if you just didn't act like you knew all the time.
right.
I love the symmetry of the relationship between Myrelle and Suan here. That as they're walking out, Myrelle is like berating Suan for like, how could you do any of that? Like, and just really coming down hard on her. And as they're walking back, Suan's like, you're mine now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have this whole thing about Bryn talking to Talmanes, the horror, the seditious horror that he might talk to a fellow commander. My God.
Yeah, tying that to treason, and I mean, it's the whole thing that Dragonsworn and Matt's band all the same thing because they're sworn to the dragon, but that's different.
Yeah, and it's treason to... No, it's not. But the reason Talmanes was trying to talk to Bryn is because he's trying to keep an eye on what's happening with Egwene and her army. I don't think he thinks he's going to rescue her, but he does think that he might need to negotiate around her. So I think he's seeking Bryn out to talk to him just to keep his ear to the ground. I don't think Bryn's seeking him out.
There's 1,000 reasons why Talmanes would want to talk to Bryn, right? With the two armies moving side by side, right?
And there's like no reasons why Bryn would refuse.
Bryn, I adore Bryn. And just the thought of him conversing with Matt at this point, I was like, getting kind of giddy and talking to Talmanes, who ends up becoming, one of these shining stars in the series. I'm just like, these people, these personalities, all of this knowledge all put together, and you've got the very serene Bryn, with the kind of jumpy and excitable and snarky Matt, and having the meeting of those minds. I was anticipating that so much when I was reading this particular chapter. I just loved the idea of those together. But so where are we in the part of Matt and Egwene right now?
She has sent them all to Ebudar. So Matt is with Nynaeve and Elaine looking for the bowl. So we had that great moment where he kneels down to Egwene before she sends him off and shows respect to her in front of everyone. That moment has happened.
I was trying to remember where we were, and that is perfect. Thank you.
Normally I don't know where we are, but because we did those chapters recently, I do.
Dead lying in the streets, food for ravens and foxes.
Ooh.
And feral dogs.
Ravens and foxes, huh?
How about that? This is definitely food for ravens and foxes. But the name on every survivor's lips was Dragonsworn. Yeah, okay.
I could see that also being sort of just a general Dark Friend order, to just be like, set stuff on fire and make sure that you say Dragonsworn before you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Just Lord of Chaos, random seeds getting scattered to the wind.
We've got evidence the band has more than doubled in size. So this is when Matt returns to the band, he's like, oh man, where's
He's
all
like
these
3
people
times
come
as
from?
big by then.
It's like, this is not the army I left. It's huge. So this is all Matt's power growing, even when he's not here. Like, that's what his luck is doing. His luck is literally putting the band in a place where it's gathering up more troops.
And coincidentally, also strengthening Egwene's army, right? Because there's the whole, the band has a certain reputation, and if Matt's not there, it doesn't have quite as much shine. So we're getting a bunch of people who are leaving the band when they show up for that recruitment and coming over to the Aes Sedai instead. So it's like Matt's helping out Egwene by not being there.
What is Shen al-Kalhar?
I think that's just Band of the Red Hand in the Old Tongue. I mean, Shen al-Kalhar never loses, whatever the odds. Yeah, I don't know my Old Tongue well enough to say off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that means... Okay.
Google agrees.
Yay! Google validated me.
I thought it might be a name for Matt. Like, we had Goldeneye in the Old Tongue for Perrin. So...
Yeah, no, I don't think Matt ever gets named like that by his followers.
No, just the Gambler.
Yeah.
The Gambler and the... do they call him... Doesn't Arthur Hawkwing call him Trickster?
Yeah, then
Or
the Finn...
do they call him Gambler as well?
The Finn call him 7 different names.
Yeah, true.
Son of battles!
Oh, let's see.
More of Myrelle being stuck up.
Yes, and more Myrelle.
She's like, oh, so much superstition. Pah.
When I first read this, and it still cracks me up to this day, when I first read Crown of Swords, I kept going, where are they going? What could they be doing? this came out of nowhere to me. And when I read it now, I'm like, was I like, how did I not see that? How did I not know that this was Lan that they were going to, with Myrelle being involved and everything that Siuan was saying, even though it was just a hunch on Siuan's part. And I'm trying to remember specifically a couple of quotes that I kept. When I look at it now, I'm like, how did I not know? But I was blindsided when she
Totally.
finally says Lan. I was like, oh, what? And then,
because he's been gone for a whole book, you just don't expect to see him at all.
and so then as you mentioned earlier, this is setting things in motion for Nynaeve. And so I know this is for later. But again, I forgot that Lan was out there in the world and heading toward Nynaeve. So the big moment, the big scene with Nynaeve, I was absolutely shocked. I never saw it coming, not once. when she is saved by him. Well, she said she had it well in hand, right? He didn't really save her, but
well, sure, right, yeah. She would have definitely made it to the surface of the water without someone to drag her up. Totally. There's a lot of conversation about Siuan, a lot of internal conversation about Siuan here.
And Bran, yeah.
And Bran, yeah.
She either hated Gareth Bryn to his boot soles or loved him. Such a difficult thing to figure out. I mean, I have issues with that relationship, but I have more issues with how dense Egwene is about it.
Honestly, I don't think the relationship has that much animosity to it. It's just that Egwene is like completely she just can't admit that they're in love, which is obvious, right? For all her animosity, she spent a great deal of time in his company, much more than she absolutely had to. And was like, if she hated him, why would she be doing that? Like, you presented two options and then eliminated one. Come on, Egwene. Mm-hmm. Come on.
In fairness, Siuan hasn't admitted it to herself yet, and Egwene is doing her best to be a mirror image of Siuan. So,
fair.
But that still, it's like, come on. You're laying it out so obviously. Like, I'm pretty sure I figured it out on my first read before either of them did. I'm pretty sure Bryn knows, too.
Oh, Bryn knows.
Bryn knows.
And as perceptive as we see Egwene becoming, and so quickly, she's like becoming exponentially savvy as we move along. As usual, some of our characters are just very dense when it comes to matters of the heart.
Yes.
We're going to see in a minute, which I think I love this moment coming up when Egwene, she breathes in like, and realizes that Bryn says the army is hers.
Yeah.
And that he is beholden to her. And I'm going, she caught that. And she couldn't tell.
Right.
This Siuan and Bryn, like, really?
Yeah.
I like the way it parallels Rand when he's in charge and he catches all the, he's like Game of Houses, but I don't get why those two Aiel keep hanging out all the time, or like so many things like that where he misses the romance that goes right over his head.
Or why did Min act like this again?
Yeah. Why is she sitting on my lap and kissing me on the lips? I have no idea. She must really hate me.
Really confusing.
Yeah, really
super
confusing.
mixed signals.
Very mixed.
I'm just a wool-headed sheep herder. Yeah. Why does she keep teasing me like that?
Really bugs me. But if I admit I love her, I have to send her away. So
right. But this is a good chapter for Egwene and Bryn's relationship, right? Because she has this thought here about like having him oppose her would be as bad as having the Hall against her. Siuan respects him. He gives her the army. Like, their professional relationship doesn't get a lot of screen time, and this chapter has a lot of that screen time.
Yeah, well, he presents her a problem. He says, hey, there's these rumors. It's going to affect my army. What are you going to do about it? And she says, well, I know that's not true, and I can make sisters who are under the oath say it's not true, right? And he's like, oh, that's really effective. I like you.
Right?
Like, yeah.
Like, oh, that works. That works.
Yeah, that works. I think in the last chapter we were like, what is this problem? It doesn't seem like a significant problem, and I think it could have been if Egwene hadn't been so effective at handling it and shutting it down.
Yeah, for now he's just ignoring Myrelle, because she's just yelling at him, and he's like, yes, Myrelle. No, Myrelle.
She gets a little bit about Matt having a reputation as a soldier, and she's like, and she says here, believing you know a thing is dangerous, she reminded herself. She's starting to get hints that Matt isn't the buffoon she thinks he is. And that's really important.
Yeah, she's maybe one of the earlier characters to start to really get it, that she needs to recalibrate about Matt.
Well, she's the one who's like, hey, Nynaeve, Elaine, are you using Matt? He's a Teviran. Are you using him? You know, like that's really important. So she's definitely the first of them who realizes his usefulness.
Despite the fact that her head is still being slowly compressed by Halima's weaving. Like, this whole chapter, she keeps being like,
My
next
head.
thing, it's like, maybe I should ask for healing. No, then they'll think I'm weak. And I'm like, if you had asked for healing, someone would have noticed weird veins of nothingness pulling out of your brain. Honestly, I think.
She says there's other ways to deal with the headaches other than healing, though. What do you...
Letting Halima massage them away. Also, she thinks she knows herbs from Nynaeve and can, like, make herself some sleep well tea or something like that. But clearly, Egwene, if that was going to work, it would have by now.
So I'm a fan of Egwene. I know that there are raging debates. I know that she can be very polarizing, that she's a very polarizing character, at least as I see on social media, the discussions on social media. But this was one of those times, the Halima and the massages and the not going for any kind of healing. I thought this was almost deliberately obtuse for her for some reason, but I couldn't figure out why deliberate. I kept going, really? She's not seeing anything here. And I feel like when we couple that with all of, again, with these, this sort of political perceptiveness that she had, when it came right down to matters close to herself, she seemed, pretty oblivious in a lot of ways.
I also have to wonder maybe if Halima was compelling her not to go seek help for the headaches.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, why, if this is the symptom, why would you not just give a little, like, hey, light compulsion to, yeah, these headaches are fine, don't get help, don't tell anyone about them.
True, I hadn't thought of that. That would actually, answer my question of why is this such a glaringly obvious thing that you should look into? Well, Halima thought of that, dumbass. So
Yeah, I always assumed it was just Halima's people skills, but as we've done the podcast, I'm like, no, she's got some kind of really light, slow drip kind of compulsion. It's not obvious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the kind you can just cut off. How else is Egwene this clueless?
She's doing something to pull on Egwene in this. Like, she says she has the Amerlin under her thumb. And it's not just, I'm giving her headaches. That's not having the Amerlin under your thumb. Clearly, she's forcing her to do something, is giving her opinions. She's definitely, the headaches are stopping her dreaming. We know that for sure. But there's got to be something else, some other compulsion going on.
Yeah, and there's also, like, she is using genuine human manipulation, too, Like,
that's a good point, yeah.
Giving her massages and talking nice to her. Like, I mean, Egwene doesn't have a lot of people she can trust, so when she thinks she can trust someone, she's really gonna, like, hold on to that. And Halima was a womanizer in Asbalal. So
Right.
it's not like how to talk sweet and lie is a foreign skill to this character.
Or how to manipulate women,
Some strong social manipulation talent there, but just a tiny bit of power to augment it. We hear a lot in the series about how milder forms of compulsion can be just as devastating as the flashier ones. We don't see that very often because it's not as flashy, but I think this is, like, a great example of how, like, 10% compulsion and 90% personality can, like, really get in there. And there is the concept that she is too strong-willed to be weak in front of the hall, but you'd think if her dreaming ability is completely crippled, there's a balance to be struck there.
I wanted to make something about this red-winged hawk that wheeled and then plunged. I couldn't find anything. I was like, Gareth Bryn's studying this red-winged hawk, and I'm sure there's symbolism in that when it wheels and nothing. And if there is symbolism, I'd love for someone to point it out to me, because I'm convinced there is something, and I just can't find it. I'm just not smart enough.
I always like that just for the visual. It's him, being occupied with this kind of majestic bird, and obviously, Hawkwing is woven in throughout the entire narrative. Not saying that there's symbolism there, but just a hawk. But I remember having that visual of him looking up while all this other stuff is going on around him, and just Bryn, just being solid, and camera comes in on this animal that he's observing, and then he kind of comes back to, oh, right, that's right, you needed something.
One thing I noticed here about the Band of the Red Hand, they've taken to wearing scarves around the arm. Didn't they do that in the battle where they were fighting with the maidens, and the maidens had to tie red scarves around their arms so they knew not to attack them?
Yeah, in Dumai's Wells, because they wanted the Wetlanders to know which were the friendly Aiel. And I don't remember when the band starts doing the red arm thing. I thought it was before here, but it might not be. It might be coming up in Abu Dar as well as here at the same time.
I mean, the red arm is here, right? Like,
right. I thought that he had established that pattern before.
Did we find out specifically why the band was doing that?
I mean, I know that Matt sets it up to be like, this is the 10% of people who are rotating through for who's going to be responsible for keeping the other 90%, like, from hurting the civilians. Arms? Yeah. The red arms are the ones who are responsible for keeping their fellow soldiers from making a mess, and they have to pay the damages if anything gets fucked up. So they rotate through that duty, but I don't remember when Matt sets it up, and I don't know why it's in this scenario. Maybe it's so that way, like, the band can easily distinguish if it's their own foragers or somebody else from, like, a distance.
Mm-hmm. I had totally forgotten that aspect. I was like, oh, the red arms.
It might be to differentiate between the band and Gareth Bryn's army.
Oh, maybe. So
that they know a soldier at a distance. They don't might have uniforms because they're all just sort of farmers who are joining up. So how do you tell that these are your soldiers and not Gareth Bryn's soldiers? The Band of the Red Hand wears a little red scarf on their arm.
Right. And so then, yeah, probably in this case, the red arms are the foragers rather than the bouncer policemen.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. Because and he set that up, and again, it's to differentiate your soldiers from the enemy, which came from the Dumais Wells battle with the red cloth.
Well, that's a whole, like, Perrin managing the Aiel thing. I think Matt coming up with it for the band is a totally separate phenomenon that just happens to look the same.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But
kind of like Rand using the red cloth in Camelin, right? Like, Robert Jordan likes his red cloth, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, apparently.
That's then we see it on the Siswai Aman. Mm-hmm. Isn't that red?
The headband.
Yeah, red headband with the symbol. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Don't know where they're getting those made, but whatever.
Right.
Maybe red dye is just cheap. That's
This foraging scene is really sad, honestly.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it makes me wonder how far Egwene has come from her farmer's roots, that she's willing to sort of take food out of a farmer's mouth to feed an army, right? Like,
she is very Aes Sedai, and more than Aes Sedai, she is very Amerlin Seat in this. She's like, the world will die if the White Tower doesn't come back together, therefore I can strip the land to keep my army. I think it's really her being as far away from her farmer's roots as she ever gets in that moment.
And I think that is very much on purpose on her part. It saddens us to see it, but as you said, it points out how very, very Aes Sedai and very Amerlin she is, that she can justify anything as long as it keeps the tower whole and the tower there for the people. Even if we're going to lose as many people as we're going to lose, but as long as this survives, we can all, press on. I think it's very on purpose.
This scene about the buildings that get burned down with people inside them, that is the White Cloaks doing their Dragonsworn thing. We saw that on Tome on Head in book 2.
Yeah, it is.
So I was doubting you earlier about who these Dragonsworn are, but that's their signature cruelty right there.
Yeah. So, no, these are absolutely White Cloaks. I'm 100% convinced.
I'm down with that now.
And just based on what, we know that, where's Bors right now?
Jacob Carden is in Abu Dar. Yeah, this would probably be under Faron, his second, who I remember being very into all of that crap when we saw them in book 2.
Probably not a dark friend, possibly not a dark friend, just really into punishing the wicked.
Yeah, I mean, with White Cloaks, potato.
I love this. Myrelle can hear anything I do, Lord Bryn. She has my complete trust. Knowing that Myrelle is keeping a secret from her. Knowing she's about to track it down. Like
that is bazinga.
Yeah.
Myrelle's like, I am so screwed.
Yeah. Yep. That was master stroke. And so then we get the thing from Gareth Bryn where he says, one tale is caught up to them on the road that Randall Thor has gone to the White Tower and sworn fealty to Elida. In timeline, we know that happened about 17 days ago. And then yesterday was Dumais Wells. And last night, Egwene communicated with the Wise Ones, and they assured her that he was fine. but didn't tell her about Do Might Wells at all.
But yeah, this is what Gareth Bryn wanted her to get ahead of, was this merchant train that was inevitably going to intersect with the army and will bring this rumor, and that will mess things up unless the Aes Sedai get out ahead of it. And so that's why Bryn was like, Mother, quick, get over, literally get ahead of this news, physically ahead of it. And then she's like, yeah, I got this. It's cool. I can promise everything's fine. He's like, okay, cool. Just making sure that this isn't going to scatter the army to the four corners of the earth.
And I can see why he didn't want to say that in the camp.
Oh yeah, no, there's, don't say it where anyone can hear, right?
The tents have ears.
Egwene is essentially lying by not knowing the truth here, right? She's like, everything's fine with Rand. I know it's fine. It's like, it's not what the wise ones told you, but you believe it, so it's fine. And not that she's bound by the oath rod, but she's trying to live like she's bound by the oath rod, and she's falling into that trap of, you can speak a lie if you don't realize it's a lie. There's a line here where she says, oh yeah, Bryn doesn't know anything about Tel Iren Riad. He figures it out right before she gets rescued from the tower.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, Swan's like going to bed and early because she needs to get to the meeting, and Bryn's like, say hello to Egwene for me. She's like, how did you know? He's like, I don't know how, but somehow you communicate with her, and it's on these nights when you go to bed early. I don't know what the mechanic is, but I know it's happening. Because he's smart as hell and can figure out that, like, when all other options have been exhausted, what's impossible is actually possible, right?
We see that both from Lan and Gareth Bryn, that they're able to work out all the background machinations that the Aes Sedai think they have hidden.
Yeah.
Like, Lan especially is like, be careful. I know you're a puppet. But you're not trying to be a puppet, so you're in danger.
Yeah.
And interestingly, like we talked about how perceptive some of our characters are, and then they turn around and you're like, what? How boneheaded. And always, the women are referring to men and how dense they can be and how dim they can be. And here we are with two of the smartest men in the entire series, right here, in this same chapter. And we're being treated to aspects of their relationships, with the women in their lives. When we talk about Lan and Nynaeve and Egwene, thinking that she knows best for the two of them, and obviously the Siwan and Bryn pairing. That's one thing I liked about Jordan's writing. Some people have things to say about how he wrote romance, or maybe that it came up so much that, oh, men are woolheads, and oh, I don't know how to act around women. But what I liked is that the fact that we did jump back and forth between these extremely intelligent, perceptive men, and then, what the women were thinking of them as far as their woolheadedness. I loved the back and forth of that. It kept me engaged. It never got boring. And even if I saw it a few times and went, oh, here's that again, I would rather have it there than not. It was something that kept me fascinated, I guess, throughout.
It's for me, it's those old callbacks in a show when, you've been watching a show for a while and it's gone on for long, and they make the same joke for like maybe the third time or fourth time in like the fifth season. You're like, oh yeah, that joke again. And you're like, I get it. Like, it's not necessarily that the joke is better the fifth time, but it's reassuring. It's like, yes, this is the show that I'm watching. This is the book that I'm reading. These are the people that I'm thinking about. So yeah, it's, or like a good callback in a comedian's set, where you get like 90% of the way through the set and he calls back an early joke and you're like, oh yeah, that was really funny. Like, I feel like that's the same thing that Jordan's doing here, is like, I've got this magnified piece of literature and I need to anchor you in certain places to the humanity, and he uses that sort of ridiculous men versus women, everybody's a hypocrite thing to just sort of really anchor you into those spots with the humor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
That's a really good point.
So shortly after that, we get her reaction. Bryn swears fealty, basically, in a very carefully worded...
Well, promises to swear fealty.
yeah, a very carefully worded promise that could mean something else if you're not paying attention. You do very well, it appears, Mother. I wish you continued success. Set your time for this afternoon, and I will come. We should confer regularly. I will come whenever you send for me. We should begin making firm plans how to put you on the Emerald seat once we reach Tarvalon.
We should make plans.
I will come whenever you send for me.
Mother, I don't want any of the other Aes Sedai in charge of this. I want you in charge of this.
You're competent. The rest of them aren't. And the rest of them don't tell him the truth.
Plus, you're kind of besties with my eventual girlfriend, so...
Right.
Yeah.
You dig Swan, I dig Swan.
Yeah.
There's definitely a little bit of like, I wonder how much of that loyalty of jumping on to her bandwagon has to do with the fact that Swan is already clearly on that ship.
I think it speeds it up a lot.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to take as much on Faith because he knows that Swan is part of the mix in a way that the other Aes Sedai don't, right? They think that Swan is being drug into teaching protocol. Brynn actually knows how much Swan and Egwene are, how much Swan is teaching Egwene. So I think that helps. I think he judges Egwene on her own merit, but a lot of questions are resolved because Swan is in the mix too.
That's right. She's got cred thanks to Swan, and I hadn't thought about that. As we see, Brynn always remembers was it the Mirandian dispute where they met, and and he remembers those eyes, and I love when he recalls that moment, because it's sort of like, I knew who you were then, and that's still who you are now, but there's this whole new aspect of you that there's a lot of cred there, and I absolutely adore the respect that exists between Brynn and Swan once he realizes who that was. But I think on that, when I'm reading, I think on that relationship a lot, and I wish I had something a little more eloquent and insightful to add to it. I think this is an example of Jordan writing relationships well. I really love this relationship.
What do you think Swan actually knows about what Myrelle is doing at this point? Because she knows about the ice peppers. And she knows a location.
I feel like if she knows as much as the audience gets to see that she knows, how did she not take that step further? When she almost seems in shock later on, she's like, well, I had put all these pieces together, and so I'm going, which pieces? And if they were these pieces, then I'm curious how you didn't come to the ultimate conclusion. So I wanted to hear your take on that, both of you.
I mean, I think it's more that she's very sure that Myrelle is doing something wrong, and that's all she needs. She's like, you're hiding something, and it has to do with these peppers and whatever, but like, it's kind of like what Egwene does, right? She goes into the situation clueless and just stays quiet until it all clicks together. I think Swan's not that many steps ahead of her, but she knows Myrelle well enough to be like, we were novices together. I knew your shit. You're doing something wrong, and I'm going to find out what it is. And she just acts like she knows more than she really does. That's how I read it.
You don't think that that there's any inkling that it has to do with warders or anything like that?
I don't think so, but the line about the peppers being popular in Shinar and Malkir,
that's the one to me that goes, that is really specific. So are you really truly suspicious? Like, why are you ordering ice peppers? Or why are you getting those?
I think she suspects that she is rehabbing a warder in secret. I don't think she suspects it's Lan, would be my guess.
That's fair, because Myrelle is the only sister with 2 rehabbed warders.
Yeah,
she has 3 warders, but 2 of them belonged to others first.
Where do you make that jump to that she's rehabbing a warder? Because we know that she is the only one that's ever done it successfully, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, like you just said, she's the only one that's done it successfully. And I love when she just loses her shit and is like, this is why I'm doing this, and I hate it when they die and all of that. But if the only clue, I'm trying to go back to the specifics. I was curious where you made the jump that that you think Swan knows that a warder is involved.
When they get there, she says to Myrelle, bring him out, Myrelle, now. It's too late for hiding. So there's a him.
And you don't... Oh, okay.
She might not know who that him is, but she knows there's a him that Myrelle is hiding at that point.
Okay. That's right. Because that's when I was like, how does she still not know it's Lan? Gotcha. I remember that now. How does she not know it's Lan? But then, looking back, why would she? Why would she She just knew that she was feeding somebody weird stuff that doesn't grow around there.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, it
right.
could also be that Myrelle was acting a little fluttery and a little like. I mean, she's not in love with Lan, but she does feel very passionately about all of her warders and has married 3 of them.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I could
acting like she does when she's got a new man.
exactly like
Right.
you got that certain mistiness in your eyes, and you're buying like fancy foods that are foreign. Like it's got to be a warder rehab, right? Like it's a big leap, but you know, Suan contains multitudes we never see. So
But I don't think she has an exact location, which is why she makes Myrelle lead the last little bit. She admits to that. I don't think she knows who the person is, which is why she's still shocked that it's Lan, even though she knows it's a him.
I don't think she knows Nisao is involved either.
She has no idea Nisao was involved. She obviously has no idea about Nicole and Arena.
Yeah, that part. She's like, when Egwene pulls out the Nicola and Arena situation, Swan is like, how did I miss this? Just like, yeah, Egwene's learning.
Because at that point, she hadn't told Swan about their little blackmail attempt.
She hadn't even had a chance,
Right?
I don't think. It only had been the night before.
Yeah,
So.
that's right. That was so early. And so then, yeah, Swan's mind is just blown when she's like, what?
Yeah.
I've never missed anything this big in my whole career. Or did I?
Like, well, they were totally trying to blackmail me earlier, so, like, I'll forgive the slip. But
Yeah.
And it makes sense that they try and blackmail the Amerlin if they were already successfully blackmailing 2 sisters.
That explains where their confidence comes from. Like,
Yeah.
if we can intimidate real Aes Sedai, surely we can intimidate the pretend Amerlin. That went well. But yeah, no, I never thought about where they got the confidence from, being the fact that they'd already succeeded at extorting 2 full Aes Sedai for, like,
me
weeks?
neither. Oh my gosh.
Well, we know Lan has been there for, 13 days?
Yeah.
Did she say? Something like
Yeah,
that?
like yeah.
So, slightly less than that, because obviously they couldn't blackmail her before Lan arrived.
Right. Wonder how they found out about the whole situation.
Nicola's got a nose for it.
And Arena is not bound to even a novice's discipline, so she can go running around getting into other trouble. She probably, like, saw Lan arrive or something.
Right. Traipsing, or, she was traipsing or hunting and was like, hey, what's all this then?
Yeah. But still, the balls to just walk up to 2 Aes Sedai and be like, I'm gonna blackmail you as a novice, and then have it work.
Right.
Like, no wonder she has the confidence to do whatever she wants after that.
Well, and then you see just how, obviously they go to these great lengths to hide it. They're freaking out that Swan, quote unquote, knows, and then they're freaking out that Egwene knows. Nisao is losing it. Like, she's just so pissed at Myrelle, she can't even breathe. She's so mad at her. And it shows you just how intense this potential violation is when these 2 little youngins can blackmail them. They're so scared of somebody finding out that they let these little brats manhandle them.
Yeah. And I mean, as the line says here, keeping the first secret always means keeping 10 more. Like, that goes for big secrets and small secrets.
So out comes Lan Mandragoran.
Dun 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 dun! After a whole book away.
After a whole book away, the return of our hero. The real protagonist of the story. I mean, the fact that he's Mandragoran, he's the Man-Dragon, the fact that he kills Daemon Dread, Lan's basically a protagonist.
Yeah, no, Lan carries so much of what gets imparted to Rand, right? And, we know that the story originally started with an older soldier being the protagonist, so Lan carries some of that, like, been around the block shit for Rand. You get to see a lot of what Rand is pointing at because you see Lan.
Can I just say, this line really hit me hard. Murmuring something to Lan, Myrelle touched his arm. He flinched slightly, like a nervous horse. Lan flinching like a nervous... Lan doesn't flinch when he faces Forsaken. He doesn't flinch when he faces Myrddraal. He flinches when she touches him. He does not want to be in that relationship.
That's some bad touch right there.
That stood out to me too, and I never could really... I couldn't really go any deeper with it. I was like, I wonder why. And because I remember reading it when I was much younger, and I was like, Lan doesn't do that. I don't understand, what's going on between them, because I didn't see an abusive relationship, and then I just kind of was like, weird, and moved on. Now that I am older and have gotten to have so many more discussions too with other wonderful fans, I go, man, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Just the amount of trauma he's been through, the fact that he is in love with another woman, the fact that he wants to die, and the fact that this woman is essentially compelling him to come to her bed.
Yeah, he's in a very dark place with no routes out at this point, and that's what Egwene gives him, is the first step out of this, very much the nadir of his entire life.
Well, and we get these lines about how, you bonded him against his will. You may have well raped him. It's like, and then you actually raped him. Like, that's really like, yeah.
Double down, sure, great.
Just double, like, because the compelling against your will means that he didn't have a choice, right? The warder bond allows you to force any male who's not a channeler to do whatever you want.
Yeah, and it's so weird how it's like, you want to give it a pass because Moraine set it up. Like, I still struggle with that when I read through it. It's like, well, but Moraine said it was okay. And it's like, it's still a loss of agency and a complete lack of respecting for consent.
And Egwene has that debate in her own head.
And the fact that it saves him for Nynaeve, like the ends justify the means. Does it? Does it really?
Well, and for Myrelle to believe that that is the only way to rehab.
Yeah.
Right.
She's so kind of sexualized in that way, and that's who she is, and she's going, he's a man. This is all he needs. Obviously I know that she knows there's more there. She has a little more depth than that, but she's believing that this is going to work. This is going to bring him along, and so to just look at him that one-dimensionally is very frustrating. So I'm with you where I want to give it a pass because Moraine said it was okay. And you wonder, did Moraine have an idea that this is how Myrelle would take care of things, that this is how she would take care of this warder? I don't know. But since we do know how the relationship between Swan and Myrelle and Moraine, we have to believe. And again, that's why she passed that bond, because she knew Myrelle's track record in rehabbing these warders. And so, she had to have known. She had to have known that this was a chance. But I don't know. She was looking at saving his life. She was looking at saying, don't let him avenge me, because he is meant for more. And when I look at it from that perspective, I'm not thinking what Myrelle is going to do and that she's going, I'm not thinking about those details. I'm thinking big picture. And that is, again, very frustrating to have that debate, to have that conflict in my head. But I do get angry with Myrelle because she seems so just, well, this is how you do it. He's a man, so this is going to be.
Don't customize your treatment to the person at all. Don't consider his feelings. Don't consider the fact that maybe, don't ask him if he's in love with somebody else before you immediately turn to sex to try and keep him alive, right? Like, the treatment may have worked for other men because they were single, but like this guy's
and
not.
she doesn't even tell him that she's intending on sending him to Nynaeve. Like, he doesn't know that that's in the original plan. He just, I don't know what she tells him, but he does not have an idea that this is a pass through to getting to Nynaeve. Like, even though Myrelle has that as a plan, but did she tell him? No, because he's just a man and doesn't deserve to know anything. The Super Skylike in chat is raising the important question of what alternatives would have worked.
Well, this worked. I mean, what Egwene did, send him to Nynaeve, tell her he needs to be protected. But yeah, like, give him a purpose is, I think, more important than giving them someone to have sex with.
Well, and the point that Aradia made, where you're saying if you didn't tell him, okay, maybe he could at least say, okay, this is what I need to do so that I can be ready for Nynaeve, whether it's sex or what. I'm here with Myrelle. She has this experience. She's a real Aes Sedai. Moraine passed my bond. I'm recovering from losing Moraine, which is a whole other, host of issues that he's dealing with. So I'm essentially going to spend time here with my therapist so that I can be ready for Nynaeve, so I can be the man that she wants, right? He didn't have that. He had, this is it. This is my life. This is what I have now. So the depths of despair are kind of unfathomable there if he hadn't come out of that. So like you said, giving a purpose might have been the alternative. But then again, well, what did we say? 13 days? It's only been 13 days.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean,
He spent longer traveling.
Right.
Right. And purely speculative, but let's maybe assume that had it gone longer, Myrelle would have been like, man, this is not working, maybe I should go find Nynaeve.
Yeah, stuff is moving very fast, and the ability to fast travel is not evenly spread out across the cast at this point. So
That's one of the reasons why we didn't see Lan for a book.
yeah, because he had to literally
He was
ride
traveling.
the continent.
Everyone else was teleporting around. I like the connection here that Skylake is making between stilling and being a warder who has your Aes Sedai die. That, like, being cut off from the power as an Aes Sedai is very similar to as a warder. You're kind of still cut off from the power when your Aes Sedai dies, because that's your connection to the one power that gives you all the extra speed, all the extra ability to not sleep, all the extra strength. Well, if that's cut off, in a way, you are stilled as a warder.
Yeah, I never thought of that parallel, but that's the level of soul-crushing despair that goes beyond logic.
And the treatment's the same. Go find a purpose.
Yeah.
That keeps you alive.
Or at least go have sex, because that'll give you 10 minutes of purpose.
You know, we talk about, you know, Satal went and she found, you know, she got a husband and got a family, and so many times they talk about a stilled Aes Sedai that's what does it for them, you know. And Sawan said, that's not going to be mine. It's going to be revenge. And again, we go back to that theme of women going, well, give him a last dandle on his knee and he'll be fine, right? You know, that this is, instead of looking for purpose, they said, let's, you know, well, Myrelle said, well, let's just bet him, and we'll see how he's doing after a bunch of that.
And we see with Satala Anand that the reason it works with her is because this guy finds her and takes her home and nurses her back to health, very customized to her, right? This was a person who decided that he cared, and like she ends up with a whole career and a family, but like it wasn't like a deliberate, oh, you need to sleep with someone. It was customized. It was what she needed, not what he needed, what she needed. And
absolutely,
it's the difference between going to regular therapy and having Freud tell you want to fuck your mother. You know, like,
yeah,
they're both therapy, but one actually works, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
meet them where they are.
Yes.
Meet them where they are.
And for all that Egwene's not great with relationships, she understands that much about this situation. This piece of the human mind she sees right to, and is like, no, Myrelle, step aside.
Well, but I do love that we got to see her youth again not too long after that, when she was like, should I have actually done that? And then she's like, well, fuck it, what's done? But I loved that there was that doubt. I loved that, you know, she's like, shit, you know, and all of a sudden we remember she's 18 years old, and, you know, and she's saying, I know what's best for Lan Mandragoran, really, you know? Yeah, but then she resolves it for us by going, nope, that's what we're doing. This is it.
Yeah, just puts on her armorless stole and is like, I made a decision, I'm committed.
I also like that we get a little foreshadowing about Ebu Dar and the way the women are down there. We aren't all Ebu Dari, Myrelle, Susan said dryly. So we haven't really been to Ebu Dar yet. We're still on the way to it.
Don't you love that? You're like, ooh, what are they like in Ebu Dar?
Yeah. You're like, ooh, there's a women-male power dynamic that we are about to find out about that is not standard. Okay, Super Silent saying we saw the Wandering Woman briefly, and that's pretty much it. So we've entered Ebu Dar.
We've seen the Tarzan
still...
Palace. We've met the Aes Sedai there, but we haven't really gotten into the culture.
Because that's really that is the bulk of this book.
Yeah, exactly. The quest for the bowl means you get a big, long, scenic tour through Ebu Dar. Take the scenic route.
Right, and then we come back to it again with Matt in 2 books and Tuon, and spend a lot of time in Ebu Dar again.
But yeah, for now, there's still a lot of like, ooh, what's going on down there?
Right?
There's this line where she says she could not imagine the courage required to accept the bargain of the warder bond. No, Lan didn't know.
No.
I think a lot of warders don't realize that they're signing up for a really messed up death, because it's assumed that they'll die defending their Aes Sedai. But like, we know in New Spring that Lan just accepts the burden of honor. He doesn't actually read the fine print on this bond.
Did he know in New Spring? I don't think he knew in New Spring. You know, I'm sitting there talking in my head going, I don't think he knew that.
He didn't.
We get a reference to the fact that a week is 10 days instead of 7. So I think I said 13 days. I don't know where I got 13 days. Myrelle's had Lan for 20 days, aka 2 weeks.
Okay.
So she says, I've only had him for 2 weeks. Today is the 20th day I've had him. So that's, you're like, wait, 2 weeks, 20th day? How does that work? 10-day weeks. which is, there's not too many references to it, but if you're looking for them, they do pop up every once in a while. God, so he swings around, she goes to talk to him, and he does that whole thing where he swings her sword around and, like, stops an inch from her head.
Yeah, because he's been working out for the last, 120 seconds, just sprinting through the sword forms, and Arena and Nicola are just like, ooh.
And that's it. They are totally spaced out, not paying attention, drooling over Lan. Egwene has to not be drooling over Lan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's just over there like, this is my mindless space. This is where this is how he can stop thinking, right? And then when she walks up and he almost slams the sword down on her head. So I had a moment like that when I was in 8th grade, actually, doing fencing. We had to learn a skill in 8th grade, and I learned how to do some Italian fencing, just like really briefly. But in the demonstration, I had this big, huge swing where the dude hit my sword, and it came around and stopped right before his head. And the whole audience, because it was the demonstration, the whole audience, one collective, they were so terrified that I was about to split my teacher's head open, like in front of them. And every time I read this scene, I'm just like, yeah, that's a good moment. That's a good feeling.
Oh my goodness.
How ridiculous is the statement, until this moment, she'd not realized how dangerous he was.
Because men are just so...
What? You traveled with him for such a long time. He killed lots of Trollocs.
Maybe the danger is to her?
Maybe.
Or dangerous to anything other than a Trolloc? I don't know.
Well, and maybe that's it, that she's going there is, there's a depth here that I don't understand. And maybe back to that darkness that we were referring to earlier, because isn't it when looks them in the eyes? I don't know. I think it's her realizing that he's capable of more than just being a warrior. That there seems to be there's some darkness that exists here, and that it's going to manifest unless she gets him the hell out of there.
I like that. I like that interpretation.
I like it a lot. That she sees the pressure that Myrelle is putting him under, and it's just cooking him and going to make him more and more dangerous. And
ticking time bomb kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he might not be pointed at the right target when he goes off, because...
Mm-hmm.
Which goes along with the flinching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is at the edge. The actual edge. Anyone could get hit by shrapnel.
And you guys brought up the that sequence where he's going through his forms, and he's going through just at lightning speed. And I remember looking at that and wondering, knowing how intentional Robert Jordan is, wondering why that particular sequence was in there. And Aradia, I know you said that it was you thought maybe it was him just looking around and going, oh, what the hell is all this? I'm not even dealing with it, so I'm just gonna do this. This is where I go to be mindless and not think of anything. But I don't know. I just wondered if there was anything more to it that you guys saw.
Well, he does do a bunch of sums about the politics of this, so...
Mm-hmm. He is not paying attention. He is focused. He knows exactly what everybody's saying. He hears every word. He might be concentrating on his thing, but it's like you and me when we're driving. It's the physicalness of it is completely automatic. You can have a conversation and listen and talk to somebody. Lan doesn't have to concentrate on the sword forms. For him, that's just a way to listen and look busy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It is so intentionally placed in there, and I kept looking for some other sort of symbolism, or some sort of being representative of something. But this is Lan, and this is what he does. And hey, everybody, this doesn't mean that he is that he's not really conscious and right here.
Well, maybe the reason he's doing it is because he knows it'll make the Aes Sedai not pay as much attention to him. It'll make it easier for him to observe them, because they will be like, oh, he's just doing his forms. Or they'll take him less seriously. If he's standing there staring at them, it's hard to ignore him, right?
It's hard to talk. They're talking about him.
Yeah. So that's how he can get them to put him on the back burner and observe unobserved.
I'm just going to go over here and be a man and play with my sword.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you ever seen those people who spins pens in class because they're bored? He just does that with a sword. He's just a sword spinner.
Yeah. Nice.
And I love that Myrelle has been able to tell that Lan has been occupied with thoughts of another woman. And Nisau's like, that's bullshit. Myrelle's like, oh, that explains everything. That makes so much sense. And Nisau's like, psh, whatever. I was like, oh my God.
I was like, that explains why he doesn't want to look me in the face.
Right, yeah. That's why I have to compel him to, interact at all. Oh.
He was quite a beautiful boy, however hard that might be to believe now. I think he's always been a beautiful boy. He's just hard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think he's cute. I think everyone thinks he's attractive. The people who like Daniel Henney's too pretty to play Lan, I'm like, what? No. No, he's a very pretty...
yeah.
There should be a very pretty man underneath all the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And scars and hair and Midoriyan.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's got gray hair. He's got sun-weathered, grooves in his face. But, like, he's a looker nonetheless. Now, my problem with Daniel Henney was that all of his pictures were with his dog, so he looked happy as fuck. And I was just like, Lan is never this happy.
Yeah, I did have to be like, yeah.
Not...
It's his Instagram. He's allowed to look happy in his own Instagram. Like,
it was hard to envision Lan with that big Labrador Retriever smile all over his face. That's all I'm saying.
Except when Nynaeve is around.
Don't you just love how seemingly random people all throughout the world here know Lan's story?
And
he's one dude, Yeah, exactly. And so when they talk about that, it just cracks me up. That's another one that keeps coming up for me. Is he was quite a beautiful boy, and all the women chased after him, and I'm like, who the hell is Nassau? Why would she know this? Like, who is she to him, and who is she to that history? But I'm trying to remember. There's a couple other characters that we meet, and they're like, what the hell? That's him, and they know everything about him. Whereas with Lan, internally, he's like, this is my thing, my burden to bear, my kingdom to avenge. No one even knows about it anymore. It's totally swallowed up by the blight, and that was when I was first reading the books, I thought, oh gosh, it's this really obscure place, and he just carries it in his heart. And then like fucking once a book, everybody's like, oh God, you don't know Lan?
Well, because his story is part of like the cycle, the Tales of the Wheel, and the Hunt for the Horn, and like the fall of Malkier, and the last king of Malkier, and the Seven Towers, and like there's stories that are widely circulated about this man. Like, he is a modern day celebrity, as he's probably more famous than anybody else you ever meet. Like,
yeah,
but in the first,
than Moraine or anything like that,
right? It's just the first time I meet him, he's just Moraine's order,
right? Yeah, I think that's really like what's embodied in his whole like march to Malkier at the end, is him being like, this is my private quest, and just people pouring out of the woodwork like, fuck no, it's not.
He's like, what, you guys all knew?
Yeah, it's his you have to let other people be heroes too moment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it ties into the Aiel's name for him, the man who is an entire people. He's as well known as an entire people, but since there's only one of him, everyone knows literally him, the individual.
Amazing.
Lan. I'm happy to talk. This is such a good chapter to talk about Lan with his return. We're so like, giddy, Lan's back.
Yeah.
Right,
it's how you feel the first time through, and it's how you feel the 1000th time through. It's Lan. He's back. It's great.
And I'm super happy he's with Nynaeve, because then when Rand comes and scoops Nynaeve up, then he gets Lan too. And I always imagine them at least, I know Rand's going a little nuts, but he's got Min with him, he's got Lan with him, he's got Nynaeve. He has a support network. He may be going crazy, but he has a support network.
And we do get the confirmation that Myrelle was being mean to Nynaeve, specifically to prepare her. So she basically did everything. She was very well intentioned and did everything wrong for bringing Nynaeve and Lan together. Yeah. Her heart was in the right place, but every single thing she did was like the worst way to make that happen.
You're saying she's an Aes Sedai?
Yes, very much so. She's a young green Aes Sedai. It's very much, of course, she's carrying the banner for stupidity in that department. Because she's only Swan and Moraine's age. She's not particularly wise.
Well, and she was a good friend of theirs. And it's funny the difference between, Swan and Moraine, who went out to do amazing things, and Myrelle, who didn't.
No, she stayed in and did amazing things.
Girl.
Well, her warders think they're pretty amazing anyway. Let's put it.
Well, and I actually one of the things I wrote about in one of the Dragonmount blogs was my take on the green and how they are the Battle Aja, but I feel like with 3,000 years and not any really big battles, 3,000 years and no last battle, that they lost their edge a little bit. And I feel like Myrelle is kind of a prime example of that. She was so caught up in relationships, and she was caught up in just being Aes Sedai, And I always wondered, did she really keep the last battle firmly? And when push came to shove, could she stand up? And I remember a quote. It was later. It was when Egwene was in the tower and fighting the Shan-Chan, and Adalorna said, "We're the goddamn battle Aja, and we just got our asses handed to us," and is going, Egwene's the girl. This is she's here. She's the one that we need to follow right now. And so Myrelle always reminds me of that. Going, if there was a last battle, maybe you could do it, but you're really bored while you're waiting and you're just doing all this stupid shit.
I feel like the White Cloaks are in a similar position because they think they're the shit, and then when push comes to shove, it turns out they're just shock troops with no real
Shocked
skills
troops,
and aren't.
more
Yeah,
like.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's just literally the lightning going through.
Yeah. Shouldn't have worn so much metal armor.
I know. Yeah, let's go against people who can cast lightning with big chunks of metal attached to us. That's gonna work out. Actually, I don't know. Maybe if surrounding yourself with a Faraday cage wouldn't be too bad if you could isolate yourself from your armor.
Yeah, I don't think that they know about Faraday cages.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. What? The physics isn't a required course in white cloakology?
No, they just study that one book over and over again.
Yeah.
I was gonna say no physics, because somehow that will be the work of the Dark One and those Aes Sedai witches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe Rafe will throw a Faraday cage type structure in the show. He should now. I hope he's listening.
Rafe.
I don't know. I really think it's dangerous to just take a single novel, a single book, and just continually search through the same pages over and over again to find meaning and base your whole life on that. I think that's a terrible idea. Anyway, let's get back to this chapter.
Yeah, let's have we know nothing about that. Definitely haven't based my life philosophy. It's not one book, it's 14 books.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I was talking about the White Cloaks.
Says the man wearing a Shy-Con shirt. Shy-Tan, Shy-Con. There's some satanic undertones over there.
I would say they're overtones.
So next I have Swan being absolutely floored by Egwene just pulling out the, by the way, the blackmail stops now situation.
Yeah, that's such a satisfying thing, because up to this point, Egwene has had a lot of... She's sort of been following along the quest line, just doing what's next, doing what's next, doing what's next. And to have her pull out, yeah, this stops now. I know this is going on. You know this is going on. I'm going to stop this. And to be yeah, I know they were blackmailing you about land. There's nothing to blackmail you about anymore. Their power is gone. And that's why they're in so much trouble. Even the blackmail power they had, what was the worst that was going to happen? They tell Egwene about land. Well, that happened.
What do you think Irena was getting out of this arrangement? Was she just supporting Nicola, or did she actually get something out of it?
Sometimes I think she's just a shit stirrer, She's loving the drama, and she's like, oh, these Aes Sedai bitches think they're all that. Watch this, But I don't know. I had never examined any deeper than that. I'm curious your take on it.
I think she's really hitched her wagon to Nicola, rain or shine. I think they've made an arrangement that you're going to be my warder, because they know about Brigida, right? So they know about female warders. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really what's been going on, is that they're like, yeah, I'm going to make you my warder, and so then Nicola's, of course, tied herself to Irena, and Irena's tied herself to Nicola.
Yeah. So then Irena can stir up trouble, stay close to her best friend, and then maybe also pick up some warder skills, right, from watching Lan and hanging out with the other warders. But I think mischief is probably half of her reason. I think you're right, Jaymie. That's very much her personality.
But I think the reason she wants to hang out around Lan is learning how to be a warder, because that's what she's going to be.
Yeah, I think that Nisao is super wrong about her wanting Lan to run away with her. I don't think that's...
No.
Nisao is not reading the relationship room very well in this chapter at all.
Irena's much more interested in Nicola than Lan.
Lan is someone to emulate, not someone to be with. Brigida was the only warder she ever wanted to have both of those things with. And since Brigida told her just go fuck off,
Which is interesting that you say that, how she's just Nisao's reading everything wrong. And, and then again, she's just totally lost it when she's like, why did I ever let you? You're just bad judgment all around. There's no intuition here, my dear.
And she's supposed to be a specialist of the mind.
Right?
Are you not understanding what anyone else is thinking in this case? Like, yeah, no wonder psychologists are terrible.
Yeah, I don't even think she really. Yeah, she was so unqualified for this. It's probably because she was the one person that Myrelle could approach. Like, that's probably why she
Right.
got picked, not because she's actually like particularly good with the mind. It's just she's the only one who would listen. And then yeah, Egwene is like, Swan, keep these women here and angry. I'll be back in like an hour, and then takes Lan to Ebudar. It's a weird thing because she just like leaves and just like everything will be fine when I get back, and she comes back and like it's all still there, but like I've always thought the timing of this was awkward.
I mean, I think that she's like, I need to get Lan out of here now before something breaks.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Fair enough. Like, Swan, hold down the fort.
But it was very unceremonious, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's abrupt.
And for a moment, I was like, how can she open a gateway? She doesn't know the area. I was like, okay, skimming works.
And then we get the key to how to kill a golem.
Yep.
And the little the tidbit about it's just impossible unless you are in the exact moment at the exact same time that you could be passing right next to each other and never know it. I love getting those little nuggets of the physics of the power.
Yeah, the way the traveling works and the way you're sort of in your own dream when you're skimming and sort of creating your own little dream shard to travel through. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like the space between dreams with all the stars, but without the stars. The stars aren't there to be touched, but it's the same void-ish. Also like the Ways space.
There's something very similar to stepping into Tel'aran'rhiod in the flesh, which she's done as well, where it's like you're actually physically traveling through the dream to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you open a gateway to do that. I always thought that scene where she travels through the dream on Bella to get back here is just skimming.
The way she approaches it, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a method of skimming, yeah. And Bella is her platform.
That's amazing. I had not thought of that. That's a wonderful connection.
But skimming through actual Tel'aran'rhiod rather than through like this, I think it's this virtual Tel'aran'rhiod is like a sort of a parallel thing where you're not in as much danger because it's your own little pocket universe.
Right. No one else can show up and like stab you or whatever. You think that like if you think that the golem could like fall down onto someone's platform as they're passing through?
I think in an infinite space, the odds of that happening are non-existent.
I don't know, man. Now I know what I'm doing tonight. I'm just gonna sit and ponder that.
Or that the golem falls for all eternity through infinite space, and those two cancel out, and so the golem falls through all space at all times.
He doesn't die.
Doesn't he?
No. I mean,
Are you sure about that?
I feel like I read somewhere that it was confirmed that the golem did eventually die.
I would assume it needs
Darn it.
blood to survive, that eventually it would starve.
yeah, I suppose it does have a metabolism.
And, the fact that they found one, they had to get it out of a stasis box. It wasn't like just hanging around after all these years and they encountered it. Like, it had to be preserved like everything else. So I would assume they both have a lifespan and a metabolism. And so now the golem's dead body might be falling forever. Just desiccated corpse.
Someday in like the 5th age, someone's like skimming along and just suddenly this like shriveled up mummy like plops onto their boat.
Just skimming along.
Yeah, it does seem unlikely. I think it probably is your own little universe, but
at that point, you want to talk to a mathematician about dueling levels of infinity.
I'll go get my water.
When she says, Lan, when you get together, the three of you get together, we'll transfer your bond. She doesn't, I'm guessing Egwene just doesn't know that you can transfer bonds without everybody being in the same place, or else that's a major plot point, because the three of them never get in the same place. The bond is passed to Nynaeve off screen when all
That's
three
right.
characters are not in the same place at the same time.
Well, it
So-
happens on screen, but yeah, Lan is elsewhere. Remember, she goes and yells at Myrelle and is like, I am free of the oaths for one more night, so you will give me that bond, or so help me.
She goes to him the night before her test.
The night
right?
after her
Mhm.
test. She
Or
gets
not, no, after
Yeah.
the test and before. Yeah, before the
yeah, her
raising.
hair's
Yep,
all burned
gotcha.
off, and she's like, do not fuck with me right now. But yeah, I'm assuming that Egwene just assumed that Lan would stick to Nynaeve so tightly that when that moment happened, all three of them would be together, and it just takes so long that that doesn't happen.
But the bond is a thing that can be passed, and I guess that makes sense because Myrelle and Moraine passed between them without Lan being present.
Right, and without them even being in the same place. I mean, it was set up, presumably, with them in the same room.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just that the bond holders have to be within arm's length of each other, but the bondee could be elsewhere.
Gee, this deal just keeps getting better all the time.
But you can't establish the bond in the first place at a distance.
Right.
But yeah, no, there's just so many issues of consent with bond.
Do you have to be touching somebody to bond them? Or do you just have to be able to see them?
According to the way that Elaine describes it, it involves touch, but she only watched it happen once and then does it once. So she's not sure. But I would assume that contact has to be made. It feels like the kind of binding thing where you need like a flesh-to-flesh contact to make it set.
I would argue that you don't need that for anything. That's a tradition that a lot of the Aes Sedai do. The whole reaching out to touch the sides of your head to delve you is very much like a, throwing motion when you make a fireball, right? You may learn it that way, and you may have to do it for yourself, but I don't think it's a requirement.
Nynaeve says it's easier to see what's happening with Loghain when she touches him, but not that it's impossible. Super Skylake in Discord is saying, so just stay as far away from women as you can because they can bond you at any time and share it with whatever women they want, plus they have cooties.
Circle, circle, dot, dot.
Did the Ashaman touch the Aes Sedai when they bonded them?
They kiss them.
They kissed them, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So, what I was going to say is that, it's probably that the original weave for the bonding was done with a touch, and so no woman has been able to learn it without that added necessary movement, but maybe if someone came up with it without that.
How do Andral and Pavara bond each other? Are they touching?
No.
Yeah, they're not touching. They're in the same room, and they're yelling at each other, and they're throwing weaves around, but they aren't in physical contact. I don't think so.
Really? I was about to jump on the you have to touch thing. I was about to jump on that train because of the physical connection that ends up existing. I thought, okay, there's got to be something really biological and physiological with having our our skin, our DNA being near each other, but no, gosh, that's right.
I mean, I don't remember that scene as well because it's in the latter 3 books. I've only read it 3 times.
Basically, they're having an argument. They're in a normal bond, a normal ring, basically a normal link. What do we call it?
They reach out to do linking for channeling.
They do linking
in their circle,
and he has control, and he starts to do stuff with her power, and she freaks out and slams a bond and bonds him to control him.
Yeah,
right, because she doesn't want him because he's in control of the power. Because she's in control. There's 2 words for bond here, right?
Yeah.
There's the circle they're in.
He's holding her in the circle.
He's holding her in the circle, and so she bonds him to try and get control, and then he freaks out and bonds her in response.
Oh my gosh. So the person who initiates the link when you're linking in a circle, right, is the one that controls it. So if if Pavara initiated the link and she brought 10 people in with her, they're all there supporting her, but she's controlling the flow, she's controlling everything that's going on.
Unless she passes it.
There's different rules for when a man is involved.
When a man's okay.
So when it's one woman and one man, the man always controls.
Yeah, and then in a larger circle, you can pick who holds it.
And so then you said he was controlling, and that freaked her out, and so her kind of knee jerk, her oh shit moment was a bond.
And it makes sense then that she could have.
I had forgotten that.
And so then it makes sense that she would have done it without touch because she wasn't thinking, well, here's how you do it. She was lashing out instinctively and so skipped the unnecessary ceremonial step of touch.
You could argue they were already touching through their circle.
Sure.
But they were touching through the power though, right? They were not, there was no physical, there was no skin to skin.
Okay, so the quote is, when he realizes she's freaking out, he drops the circle. And then she immediately lashes out once she gets control of her power back.
Oh.
So they're not actually in the circle. Because obviously if they're in the circle, she doesn't have her power, so she couldn't have bonded him. So he drops the circle. He's like doing stuff, doesn't realize she's freaking out. Realizes she's freaking out, immediately tries to, de-escalate.
And she behaves
and gives
like
her
a red
power back.
And doesn't.
And she immediately lashes out. Yeah. So it's a little confusing. But yeah, the long and short of it is that they don't appear to be touching when they bond each other.
So you probably have to see someone to do it. You couldn't bond someone across the world just by thinking about them. But
one of the rules of the one power, you need to see what you're doing to affect it.
Oh yeah, that was established early on, even when Right? Was that still in the first three books when he was kind of still working things out, and we find a few little inconsistencies here in those first few books, but I think that was one of the ones that remained steadfast.
I think it's one of the reasons that makes traveling so dangerous, right? You can actually affect an area you can't see, you just know about.
Yeah, for sure. So awkwardly avoiding looking at the hickey.
Yeah.
And then the motion without motion, and the idea that leaving the wrong end of the barge from the skimming platform would lead somewhere strange.
Any idea where?
The other side of the world?
Well, Gideon was horrified at the idea.
I'm guessing some sort of like mirror image. So either the other side of the planet, or hundreds of thousands of miles inside the planet, or into space, or something very broken.
Probably just something that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and would kill you and everyone nearby, so there would be no useful research notes to take away.
Because just imagine, like, if you take a random point in space and teleport to it, you're probably going to die. Because you're either really high up in the sky or really, inside the Earth. Right? So, yeah, I imagine opening a gateway at the back would just take you somewhere that would be bad. Somewhere random.
But I wish that we had gotten to find out, because anything that is attached to the sentence Moghedien had found the idea frightening. I'm like, oh my God, please do it, please do it.
But Moghedien's a coward, so it's not the reality is she finds like fuzzy caterpillars frightening. She's like
True.
Her entire quest for power is to protect herself from her fear.
I just gotta wonder how weird this must be for Lan to just walk into the darkness onto the platform, and then they just stand there for a really long time, and he doesn't ask her what's happening or where they're going. They just stand there.
He's like, well, this child Amerlin seems to know what she's doing. So, but yeah, and to think that this tech, it didn't exist when our story started. It didn't exist at all that these abilities to him, this couldn't exist in the world, because Moraine had never done it, and she knew everything that there was to know about the power. That is amazing to me. That it's like we talked about earlier with Bryn. You're kind of like, well, okay, there is an explanation for it. I've reasoned everything else out, and so here comes the impossible. And for this child to be directing this new aspect for him, I don't know, just shows that solid Lan-ness again.
For sure. And he's very fatalistic. Like, whatever comes at this point, right? He's like, I'm away from Myrelle, so honestly, like, I could stand here in the dark for like a week before I get annoyed.
Right.
Finally, some quiet.
Right. Seriously.
Interesting. That I wonder what the water bond's like when you're skimming, right? Because if you're on the other side, when you're far away, it's distant. But like, what happens when she closes the gateway and you're in another world?
I think it becomes directionless.
Right? It would have to.
You still have the connection, but you don't know where they are anymore.
That would seem disturbing. We never hear about anyone in the skimming space talk about their bond.
Because we do hear about, you can tell when they're traveling, right? Like, oh, he's jumping from here and he's jumping from there. Alana talks about Rand a lot. Yeah, I don't remember a skimming instance. But skimming kind of went away for a long time, if I remember correctly. It was used quite a bit, especially in 6 and 7 in Lord of Chaos, and then obviously here. And then I remember skimming coming up again way later. I'm like, oh, right, skimming's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, they started doing those like short jump gateways where you could like make a gateway from a place or it turns out you can open a gateway a short distance no matter where you are, which always confused the hell out of me.
Seriously.
I assume it's because when you open a gateway, you know the destination, and if you open a gateway a short distance away, that means you also know the starting point, and so therefore you know the starting point through that weird. It's weird. Anyway,
it actually makes sense, though. I'm with you.
And then once you make the short gateway, that you know the area, and you can make a long gateway. So essentially, you can short hop anywhere. You can make a gateway anywhere by short hopping and then long hopping. So then skimming really becomes obsolete because you get rid of the necessity of knowing your location with a gateway. So that's probably my biggest complaint about the magic breaking. Like, there's all sorts of ways that Jordan and Sanderson break the magic, but the number one complaint I have is the short hop that teaches you how to do a long hop. It's like, no, that makes gateways really OP.
The one power being OP? What?
One power is OP. Oh my gosh, it's overpowered. Yes, the one power. That actually works really, yeah. The one power by definition is OP.
The first time I read descriptions of like a D&D thing being OP, I was so confused. Like, what? Okay.
I'm glad you brought it up, Aradia, because I was like, is he okay? Why is that one power? Okay, power.
Okay.
One power.
Okay.
Okay, I'm with him.
Gotcha.
I got him.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up was Lan apologizing to Egwene for taking her away from the Two Rivers, for helping take them away, and then saying, "You're doing really well. Like, you've got a hold on them. You're doing well." Like that. The things he does say to her in the course of this trip is like, you know, he's in a dark place, but he's still Lan.
I saw it a little differently, I think.
Yeah?
In a lot of ways, I think he's like, the help you're giving me, you're kind of turning into an Aes Sedai, right? I've taken away your innocence. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that you're terrible now. Like, basically, is what I saw that as, right? Like, I'm so sorry that I ruined your innocence, and
that I set you on the path to become one of them.
Exactly. It would be like two people who love theoretical mathematicians, and one goes on to, like, play the stock market and, like, destroy the world economy. And the other one's like, well, I'm sorry I ever taught you math. You know, like, I'm sorry I ever took you out of your ignorance, because it turns out, like, it didn't really work out for you, me, or anybody else.
I did not have that cynical of a take on it.
Yeah, very doomsday, you know, that now you're one of them and we're kind of doomed. When I look at that part, I just go, I don't like that line. I don't like that it's in there, because I feel like it negates everything he did in the beginning, you know? And he's like, we listen to Moraine. We trust Moraine. You listen to her. You know, he was so solid for that. And I feel like Lan that's the only time that Lan even remotely, like tiny, a little bit lets me down, because I feel like he's saying, I regret all of this. And I'm going, but I'm in book 7 of this freaking series here. You know, this is the path it was all supposed to take. And you're looking and you're saying, I regret all of that seriousness and all of that guidance and everything I did for you and everything we went through together was really just was not important. I don't know. I felt like it negated everything that he stood for in the beginning of the series. And even though we know he's changed, I'm with Aradia. He's still very Lan here. I felt like he was a different person when he said that line.
To me, that's why it's such a landline. This is him saying, yes, woman who's desperately in love with me, who I'm in love with, I'm not going to marry you. It's that. It's the I don't want to give you widow's weeds kind of energy. Mm-hmm. He's like, you know, I know that this is good for you and I know that you want it, but like it makes me feel sad, so I'm going to like shit all over this. I'm just going to rain on your parade. And also, I think he's really conflagrating Egwene and Nynaeve at that point. Like, he doesn't want to endanger Nynaeve, and Egwene is clearly deeply in danger, and that will make Nynaeve in danger. And so I always felt like this was him returning to that same stoic, I must go it alone kind of energy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can see that.
But then taking responsibility for people who he doesn't have a right to take responsibility for, and taking away their agency, and being douchebag stone-faced Lan that we all rage at the beginning, like, just kiss her already. Had there been any real danger in Ebudar, Elaine or Nynaeve would have said something. Really,
yeah,
Egwene?
Right.
You actually believe
right.
that?
They had worked out a way to leave messages in Saladar, and I think they learned that an inverted, tied-off flow of air has some longevity in Teleron Riyadh.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing.
So.
I never expected that to last, but I guess it does for a certain amount of time.
Time flows differently?
I don't know. That's always I don't like it. I feel like it should be blown away instantly. Like, I don't like that. I guess the one power can fight Teleron Riyadh a little bit, but yeah, I still don't like it.
No, I liked Leanne's way of doing it, where she like gets people to paint their doors blue and stuff like that through their dreams. That makes way more sense. But the whole like you can tie off a weave that leaves a note is like,
it's not my favorite, and they don't really use it very often. I think it's like once.
No, RJ must have been like, yeah, no. But yeah, she sends him off to Ebudar in a cloud of dust, and then goes back. And
when we next see him, he's tugging on Nynaeve's braid.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's very wet.
So she heads back, and we see sort of Myrelle and Suan and Niso just in a big brawl argument. about manners and who's in charge and the warders.
And the warders being, like, on their toes.
The Aes Sedai are worried about, like, you know, Moraine comes back and is like, yeah, Suan's threatening to strip the warders off. Like, they're worried. The warders are worried they're going to be taken away from their Aes Sedai.
Which is honestly such a bullshit threat from
It's
Swan. Like, that's so out of proportion to the crime. Like, this is a very unusual punishment, and this is not that unusual of a crime. Like,
well, again, I don't know. We go back to the rape of Lan. That's the rape of.
But it's fairly normal in Aes Sedai culture.
Not anymore.
Only by a few centuries. There's still Aes Sedai who were novices the last time this was done, and it didn't get an eyelid batted at it. It reminds me of, like, when the girls come back to Tarvalin and Phelan's like, you're probably going to be stilled for running away. And it's like, that's not the correct punishment for the crime. That's not how that works.
Right, that's not how that works.
Yeah, so I always just thought that Swan maybe got a little carried away in that moment, because it doesn't seem like the thing the Hall would do. Though it would be very like the Hall to not give a shit what the warders think. And then Nisao tells Egwene she's very, very dangerous because she's smart and good at the game and not even 20 yet. You've done what's never been done before. That's always dangerous. It won't be the last time.
No.
This is correct. It will not.
And it does kill her in the end. And so, yeah, she comes up with this bullshit, like, and she's basically blackmailing them, again. As much as she's pissed at Nicola and Arena for blackmailing them, she turns around and blackmails them. And is like, if you don't do what I say, if you don't swear fealty to me, I am going to reveal this crime to the sitters, and you're going to be punished for it.
She spends, like, half a second feeling guilty about how backhanded that is. And then she decides, no, it's what the Armelin must do, it's fine.
There's a bit of G-Ito in this. Honor and obligation. It's like,
Yeah, G-Ito with politics. It's fascinating. And Swan is like, let's kill them. That'd be simple, right? This blackmail situation, let's just kill some of the people in the loop. That'd be fine.
Well, certainly Nicola and Ariana.
Yeah, not the Aes Sedai. Just.
But how quick she was to go to that. I just remember thinking, that's what? So did she do that a bunch of other times? You know?
Right?
When else has she done this? Because it was pretty easy for her to go there, but she also she's not bound to the oaths right now, you know. But I mean, she could order that as Amerlin when she was Amerlin before. But yeah, anyway, all I could think of was, dude, have you done this before?
People cross a line and they get taken out in Swan's life.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee she
so.
ordered deaths. That's the Amerlin seat. Absolutely. In other countries, of kings.
Yeah, probably never for anything this petty, but yeah, killing to keep secrets is like, oh, you're in gray territory right now. And I'm not talking about the Grey Aja.
Yeah, that's the other way of negotiating.
Right. And I wonder if for me, why I was like, wait, what? Is because I just keep wanting to see the best of her. You know, I don't know. I get upset when my favorite characters with all this honor, you know, show some
more greatness,
humanity.
Yeah.
And go a little
yeah,
right. Like,
it's
that's right.
Problematic faves.
Suan was not successful as Amerlin C for 10 years for no reason.
The surface would have you believe that it's because she was just so darn good at puzzles, right? It was puzzles. That's what it was.
Yes, the puzzle of who to kill and how.
There you go.
I mean, I have no doubt she used killing as a last resort because in a G-Ito sort of way, right? Like, that's the lowest honor way to win, but, like, she's gonna win at the end of the day.
So she gets two more people to swear fealty to her. That brings the total to 4.
And then she can say that when she demands it from the rest, that others have done it before you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and how much, again, the parallels between Rand and Egwene are so high. The swearing of Aes Sedai knelt and, you know, for the first time and swore, right? Like,
and the world was changed.
And then we have Aes Sedai swearing to these villagers from the Two Rivers that we met a year and a half ago. These ignorant villagers who didn't know an Aes Sedai from a horse suddenly have some of the most powerful women in the world bending knee and swearing to them. So there's some real parallels there. Everybody picks up, even Perrin picks up a spare of channelers. Like,
They've been going their own way too long. They need some oaths of fealty to lock them down and keep them on a single trajectory so they can finish this damn battle.
Like, we need to shake things up. Let's swear to some Hicks. They seem pretty strong in their resolve. They're going to get us through it.
And then this is where we get the Suan is essentially the voice of Egwene to these two women. She gets to, for the first time, Suan gets, she went from a nobody to all of a sudden she has two Aes Sedai at her beck and call.
Yeah, her power is yo-yoing all over the place. But it's the only way for Egwene to really utilize the fact that she has the fealty of these two. She can't be teachers petting with them all the time, right? She can't have those two attending her all the time. She has to have an intermediary, and Swan is a perfect person for that. And it upsets their power structures a little more, which makes them a little more malleable to what she's trying to do.
Exactly.
And at this point, the sisters, you're like, how does nobody see that Egwene and Suan are these partners? But as far as everyone else is seeing, Egwene is still pretty incompetent. It's not until she gets the war declaration that they're like, oh, this is, whoops. Yeah. So she's gathering all this power kind of in the background.
When I think back on the series, my first read, Shadow Rising, Fires of Heaven, and Lord of Chaos, they stood out to me so much. I loved the depth, and I loved all the character development. I loved all the description. I know they go kind of long for some people. And then I would look back and be like, oh yeah, and I think some stuff happened in Crown of Swords. And I was on a reread a couple of years ago and was like, holy shit, I forgot how much amazing stuff happened in this book. And it wasn't just setup. I mean, things are happening, things are falling into place. And and the war declaration, I was reading in Lord of Chaos, and I was like, oh, well, I guess it's not in here, because I kept waiting for it to happen. And then I was like, it's gotta be Crown of Swords. Anyway, it was just so much fun for me to reread that. I guess it's longer ago than 2 years ago. When we think back and we say last year, we are all talking about 2019, right? So, yeah. I think that this reread probably happened around 2017 or maybe 2018 before JordanCon. But I just remember going, damn, I forgot how much I love this book, and good time.
So Egwene gets back to her tent?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at next.
She walked in her tent, her mood sank right to her feet, her head throbbed, because I think there's a weave on the tent that's giving her the headaches.
And she's beginning to think she should stay away from the tent altogether. Yes, Egwene, your intuition is correct. But of course, there's also the real headaches of Ramonda and Lelaine and their bullshit that's waiting on her desk. There's a lot of reasons to avoid the tent, not all of them nefariously magical. But yeah, Ramonda wants to summon everyone together and interrogate them into declaring if they're black or not. And Lelaine wants to just ban mention of the Black Aja.
So I think in the last chapter, we overheard the conversation where they were like drastic measures, and I was arguing that they were arguing for a gateway to get the Oath Rod, but I think it's just this. They'll be interviewed, summoned one by one, and tortured into it. I wanted to think that they were smart enough to go get the Oath Rod, but I guess not.
Romaine is not that
it's
smart.
really not. It's pretty bland.
Yes.
I like that, Romaine.
I missaid it once, and now I'm just like, that's their name.
That's their name. I love that.
And then Egwene drops into her chair and nearly gets thrown onto the carpet because the shaky leg is very shaky.
Her seat of power is extremely shaky. The Amerlin seat has a loose leg. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, boy.
All right, Jordan, on the nose with the analogy there.
Yeah, but both of these proposals are a terrible idea because they would splinter this camp and send everyone back to Elida, and just it's almost like Ramonda and Lelaine are working for Elida, except that we know they aren't, but they're so short-sighted they might as well be. It's just like, ugh, it's so relatably
I know, it's like a
frustrating.
good thing I can't think of any parallels where politicians are working against their own interests or the interests of
they think they're doing a good job and say the right things and just do everything wrong. Yeah, that's never happened. Think of any. I can think of zero examples.
You can think of your own. Put them in there.
We leave that as an exercise to the reader. I've said for years that I have learned a huge amount about history, politics, economy, military strategy, interpersonal relationships. I have learned so much about the real world and made my interactions with the real world better because of marinating in Wheel of Time. And that's without even having someone guide me through it in particular. It's just, you pick it up.
And I'm with you. I've learned a lot, and it turns, now I teach history, you know, and I go, oh my gosh, I really want to bring this up, but my kids haven't read this. But I think it's a great way to bring fantasy in and show people there are merits. It's not just living in a fantasy world. It's saying I can learn without putting my own bias, you know, on these concepts.
And it helps that Robert Jordan, you know, read an absurd amount of not fantasy, right? Like he brings in so much that I assume that not every writer has that level of depth and richness that can be drawn out of their work because they weren't reading as many other things as Jordan.
These wonderful historical Easter eggs that Robert Jordan added, you know, that some of the Forsaken were based off of leaders of the Nazi regime, and, you know, down to the person, and taking some of those traits. And so, not to say that he was cribbing all of this, but he used so much as in the way of inspiration. And as I teach history, I learn more and more about world religions, and there will be some really obscure aspect of, you know, Taoism or Buddhism, and I'm going, oh my gosh, because I know Wheel of Time so well. I'm like, you are kidding me, Jordan? Did you really? You know, and I just love it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why this series is so enduring, no matter how many reads you do, is because it's like it's turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
So next I have, her head was going to burst. May I come in, mother? Halima Saranov waltzes into the tent.
Yes. Hello, Halima. As though she owns the place, because she does.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, looks like your head's hurting. I wonder how I know that. Crank, crank, crank.
Interesting tidbit, apparently here the hall's meeting without her approval, which we know is how Suan was deposed, and Egwene is very much against that, and that's part of one of the things she does in the reunification of the tower, is make sure that never happens again.
And then there's this whole like, oh, Halima, you should have gone home when Cabriana happened to die. It would have been safer for you. And Halima's like, oh no, I have so much loyalty to Cabriana.
I threw off her horse.
Oh my God. Yeah, she just broke her neck spontaneously one day. Definitely wasn't tortured to death by Summer.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Poor girl.
Which, like, that happened 2 books ago?
That was a fair amount of setup. Yeah, a while ago there was that.
It was a long time ago.
That we saw Semirog torturing Cabriana.
The whole pleasuring the warder to death thing, and, like, that's so long ago. Like, you're not thinking about that at this point.
But that's absolutely what that was referencing. She rather liked the woman, whatever anyone said. I think that's, again, that light compulsion. That, like, you're gonna like me no matter what. And,
like, her description of why she likes her. Like, Egwene is a puritanical prude with so many ideas about propriety. And she's like, I just like this earthy, sultry woman that just doesn't give a fuck. It's like, who are you?
Why
what have you done with Egwene?
That's not who you like. Those aren't the people you like.
Like, you hate Barrelane for wearing low-cut dresses, and you think it's cute when Halima does it? Like...
And then she says, oh, her smile seemed inviting or teasing because of the shape of her mouth. She smiled the same at a man or woman or child.
Yeah.
And again, when I look back at that, I go, how did I not catch that there was some compulsion going on here?
Yeah. Though in fairness, I think that Halima probably does smile the same at everyone because everyone is a pawn to her. And she will use them all equally. but yeah, she's like, True. You can't go to the sisters for this. Yeah, no, you're right. I can't. It's like, oh my God.
Although she smiles and flirts, she never goes to bed with anyone because she's still a dude on the inside and doesn't actually want to sleep with any of the guys.
And also, I think, doesn't want to have any level of vulnerability with anybody, even if it's assumed, because that could either blow her cover or, like, not get her rocks off, right? Like, either way, it's unacceptable.
She makes do with Delana, right? Doesn't she? She takes full advantage of Delana Sedai, doesn't she?
She does.
Physically, yeah.
And
she does.
So she's like, I don't need to jump in with anybody else if I have needs that need to be taken care of. I got this one over here who's going to do whatever I say.
Yeah, and is fully subservient, which is, important. The Egwene's like, oh, well, she would have told, like, the fact that she didn't tell everyone else in the camp about these headaches indicates friendship, if not loyalty. It's like, or it indicates that she's sabotaging
Or she's
you.
doing it.
Right.
And all the little bits of information that, like, oh, Helena brought this information that Elida wants to steal half of them and break the rest, which is entirely designed to keep them apart. And it's a lie. That's not what Elida wants to do. She doesn't want to steal half of them.
Yeah, she wants to steal as few as possible, actually.
And so it's like, oh, surely that message got garbled somehow. No, it's just a deliberate lie. It's just a lie.
It's just a way of saying garbled, falsified entirely from whole cloth.
Egwene had known that at their first conversation, the day after Loghain escaped, again linking Halima to Loghain, when the headaches began. So we get a beginning of the headaches, which is the day after Loghain escaped.
And I think that's because dealing with Loghain was Halima's first goal. She wanted to get Loghain stilled or killed, and when he vanishes, she's like, okay, next target.
And you can't have you can't weave a bunch of things if there's a male who can see you weaving things.
Yeah, she's channeling Sayidine is not something you want to hear. I mean, because it's a death sentence, as we learn. And then, she's just like, put yourself in my hands. I'm so helpful. And Egwene just relaxes. It's so creepy.
And then this is the first time I saw this. She's thinking about North Harbor and South Harbor and how to block them, and then she immediately turns to thinking about getting everyone tested for talent in Earth, which of course means talents and the ability to create Quendiar. So she's already coming up with the plan to create the Quendiar chains to block the harbors.
Which, I think in the last chapter I said she hasn't thought of that yet. So that's happened in the course of this morning. That loop closed.
Well, she just got told by Brynn the key to the harbors was blocking them. And so she's trying to come up with ideas of how to do that.
Yeah. Took her like 2 entire hours to figure out a solution.
Which, for once, someone's head went to Quendiar as the solution. When it's like, how often could that be the solution to so many things? Like, Quendiar armor, Quendiar swords, Quendiar, why is that not a thing that gets used way more often?
Egwene has a talent with Earth and a talent with practicality at the same time.
And since that is such an affinity for her, that's the first place her mind will go, so...
No, that's true. This is Halima. You're tensing again. Stop worrying over the hall. Those soothing fingers paused, then began once more. This would do better tonight after you've had a hot bath. I could work your shoulders and back We haven't tried that yet. You're as stiff as a snake. You should be supple enough to bend backwards and put your head between your ankles. Mind and body. One can't be limber without the other. Just put yourself in my hands. Egwene teetered on the brink of sleep. Not a dreamwalker's sleep, just sleep. How long since she had done that? The camp would be in an uproar once Delena's proposal got out, which it would soon enough, and that was before she had to tell Ramonda and Lelaine she had no intention of issuing their edicts. But there was one thing yet today to look forward to, a reason to remain awake. That would be nice, she murmured, meaning more than the promised massage. Long ago, she had pledged that one day she would bring Shiriam to heal, and today was that day. At last, she was beginning to be the Amyrlin, in control. Very nice. At last, she's beginning to be the Amyrlin in control, as her body is literally being taken over control by a Forsaken, and being
body and
mind, yeah.
Yeah. It's a morning of victory for more than just Egwene. Halima is winning, very much so.
Nice, Jaymie. Thank you so much for coming on for that massive episode.
Yeah, thanks so
It was great to have you on. Really appreciate it. It was a pleasure. Really
fun.
pleasure to talk to you.
I hope to meet you at JourneyCon sometime.
Yes, ma'am. And and likewise, it was wonderful to talk with you guys. It's good to chat, but every time I listen to you, I learn something new, and now I got to do it in real time. So,
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?